Hello, guys. I hope you're doing well. My name is Colin, and this is Colin Talks Crypto. I want to bring you an update on this very fascinating correlation between the global M2 money supply and the Bitcoin price. For a quick recap, this chart is showing you the yellow line, the global M2 money supply, not just the United States money supply, not just China, not just any singular country, but rather globally, all countries added together on a single line. This is not a native TradingView chart metric. This is actually a script that I've put together, which aggregates all of the countries' data into one line, and it updates on a daily basis. And below, we have the Bitcoin price line. Now, what's fascinating about this correlation is that it seems like the global M2 money supply predicts in advance the directional move that the Bitcoin price is going to make. And it seems to be about 1 to 2.5 months advance notice telling us what the Bitcoin price is going to do before the Bitcoin price does it. I know it sounds too good to be true, but the correlation is there right in front of us, staring us in the face, and this is what we're looking at here on this chart. I'm going to back into this and show you how I came to the chart that you're looking at right now. But just to give you the high-level overview, what this is telling us is that the next approximate date that the Bitcoin price is going to change direction is March 7th. And the move that it's going to make is up because the global M2 money supply line here is moving up. Now, watch what happens. I'm going to change the shift on this back to 0 days. Right now, this is a 46-day shift to make it line up. This is the native data, okay? You can see that it does not match exactly. And it takes that 46-day shift to make it line up. Now, if we zoom out, we're going to see that correlation a little more clearly. And we will take a look at this. We're going to zoom way out here. Okay. We've zoomed out a lot now, and you can see they're overlaid on top of each other, and I can move them around. Now, there's some things I learned about this recently that I want to share with you. As I said, the current prediction of the next blast-off date for Bitcoin is March 7th, approximately. However, that date does change gradually and slowly. And this is the most up-to-date figure, March 7th, based on the most recent global M2 money supply data and the most recent Bitcoin data. And there's a big observation I made is that this time correlation, which is currently a 46-day correlation, where I moved the global M2 money supply line forward by 46 days, that number changes. Like 5 days ago, it was a 52-day correlation, 52-day shift forward to make it best match the Bitcoin price. But still, you're getting a 52-day advance notice of what's going to happen with the Bitcoin price. Now, as of today, it's about a 46-day advance notice. And the trend that I've observed is that it seems like that correlation shift is decreasing over time, at least over the past few weeks as I've been watching it. It's possible it increases and decreases and ebbs and flows. But as it stands today, that time shift forward is 46 days to give us the correlation between the M2 money supply and the Bitcoin price. So it's fascinating to me that explains why the date keeps changing slightly as in regards to the next move that Bitcoin's going to make. So the most recent correlation is the most valid correlation, and that's why I keep updating the chart. Every 5-7 days or so, we have new data, and we can kind of get a better feel for when that next move is going to happen for Bitcoin. But it's an uncanny correlation, and it's too close, in my opinion, to be coincidence. And if you think about it, it does make sense. Like, you may be asking yourself, why would Bitcoin's price follow in any way the global M2 money supply? Well, it's pretty obvious if you think about it. Bitcoin is a risk asset. And what fuels the money for a risk asset? Well, it's the money globally that can be put into it on various exchanges around the world. And Bitcoin is a global asset. It's not an asset for just one country. So it makes sense that the more money entering the global economy, the more money that has the potential and seems to move into the Bitcoin asset. And conversely, the less money globally that is in existence, if the global M2 money supply decreases over a period of time, which is detracting money out of the various countries around the world, lowering that money supply, then it has the effect of a dropping Bitcoin price as people take their money out of Bitcoin, this global asset. So it's pretty clear that there is a correlation, and it's pretty clear, understandable when you think about it for a moment, how that could be. So I'm going to show you how I came to the chart that I just showed you at the start of the video and how I'm predicting that there is going to be a Bitcoin blast off around March 7th. This is way zoomed out, okay? This goes back to 2021. Here's the previous Bitcoin price peaks. Here's where we are currently with Bitcoin price, around $95,000. And I'll show you something interesting about this more recent price action a few minutes later in the video. Now, as I said, this time shift prediction factor changes over time. You do sort of see a rough correlation. Like here, this bottom in the global M2 money supply is basically correlating to this bottom in the Bitcoin price. And you can see that it's advanced, it's ahead of time. So it predicted this bottom by about, I think it was 2 months or so. And you can see that like the Bitcoin price here takes off vertically, and that's right here where the M2 money supply takes off vertically. And we can move these things around and get a better feel for them. You can see here how this kind of peak, sub-peak, and this sub-peak corresponds to this sub-peak and this sub-peak of the global M2 money supply. And even this right here, the Bitcoin price and this of the M2 money supply sort of correlates. You can see just the broad shapes of it very much follow each other. And here you actually have the M2 money supply following the Bitcoin price moves. So it's not always an advanced prediction. There's an occasional laggard prediction, but I would say 80% of the time it's an advanced prediction. The global M2 supply is an advanced notice of what the Bitcoin price is going to be doing. You can see that the COVID Bitcoin price drop right here in 2020 almost perfectly matches the global M2 supply drop. And that makes sense because COVID was a global pandemic with global effects and reactions by the governments, printing money and a market crash and all of that. But as you move forward, you'll see some of it's a little looser, some of it's a little more robust of a correlation. But basically from the bottom of COVID till the top of the 2021 Bitcoin bull run, you have this steady and very steep increase of the M2 money supply, which correlates from the bottom of the Bitcoin price right here all the way to the top of the 2021 peak. And in fact, even to the top of the second peak. The money supply just keeps going up and up and up. One thing to take away from this chart is it's not going to give you the exact hour, day, or even necessarily the exact week that the price is going to move for Bitcoin. But it is going to tell us, I feel, within a margin of error, that the Bitcoin price is going to directionally follow the global M2 money supply. So right now, the charts are overlaid on top of each other without any time shift factor. To make them match up, I'm going to move the global M2 money supply line forward. And I've got this time offset feature that I can use to push the chart forward. And I'm doing that right now, and you can see I'm moving it by 10-day increments. And that's moving the entire global M2 money supply line forward. And you can see that when I do so, it starts to better match the Bitcoin price line. In fact, let's move it forward one more notch here, 50 days offset. But as I said at the beginning of this video, this time offset or this time shift moves through time. And that's the tricky thing. If you think you can just set it at one figure and it explains everything, then you're going to be misguided. It's not like that. It moves through time. I'll give you some examples. So right now, with a time offset of 50 days, we seem to have this first Bitcoin price peak explained, and we seem to have this Bitcoin price bottom correlated pretty well too. But if you look to the right of the graph, let's move over this way now. Let me get rid of this because that's not true anymore. We don't quite have it matching right here. You can see that the global M2 money supply line is a little bit premature. And see how there's these three peaks right here? 1, 2, 3. Well, here's the correlating peaks, 1, 2, 3 of the Bitcoin price chart. But this isn't lined up. It's too far forward. So let's try to make it match. Let's see, what does it take? How many days of offset does it require to make those peaks line up? That's better. That's pretty good right here. Let's do a little bit more, or a little bit less, I should say. 10 days offset. So I would say that the 10 days offset explains this period of time from January 2023 to about September 2023. And that's how long that correlation lasted for, that 10-day offset. But you'll see that the bottoms are now off sync. So this is my explanation of how the actual time offset shifts through time. But now let's move forward even more, okay? Let's get closer to the present moment. But then what do we have here? We seem to have it sort of fall off. The correlation sort of falls off. For example, this run up in the global M2 money supply doesn't really reflect itself. In fact, it seems like that's really more, maybe right around here when it starts. Maybe here, the bottom of this Bitcoin price chart. So let's make it line up again. What do we need to do to make it line up again? Is it 40 days offset? So now that we've got the bottom here, the August 8th bottom, the August 5th bottom for Bitcoin basically matched up, we can see that we're starting to get an idea of what's going to happen in the future. But let's go really accurate. Let's zoom in even more, because you can see that, again, it seems to decouple a little bit. It seems to lose that correlation, that tight correlation. And we want an absolutely tight correlation so that we can understand the most accurate prediction of what's going to happen. So let's move this up again. Let's see, is it 50 days correlation? That's looking good. That's looking better, because now we have, let me move this chart off so you can see it better. See this hump in the Bitcoin price? Well, here's that hump in the M2 money supply. And now we're getting pretty recent. Now we're in January of 2025. So we can understand that this is probably going to be the more accurate time offset with all things considered. And in fact, you can even see how this bump up in the M2 money supply correlates to this bump up in the Bitcoin price. It's starting to get a little bit looser back here. Here's this little sub peak in the Bitcoin price, probably this sub peak in the global M2 money supply. But we're going back in time as we do that, and we'd have to shift the chart offset back as I just explained. So, but we want more accuracy, okay? So we're zooming in. We're zooming in, way in here. All right, and now we are all the way zoomed in to basically the present moment. And this leads us to the chart that I started the video with, and you can see how we got there. So currently, we have a time offset of 46. 46 days seems to be the current time shift required to match the Bitcoin price chart to the global M2 money supply chart. And to come full circle to what I was saying, there's something interesting with the current price action of Bitcoin down here. See how it's this narrow channel really since February 4th or February 3rd? Well, that narrow channel is exactly what the global M2 money supply predicted was going to happen. The same exact thing with a 46-day time shift, keep in mind, was telling us 46 days ahead of time that that was what was going to happen with the Bitcoin price. It's really uncanny. And you can even go so granular as to look at this little sub-peak and this sub-peak in the global M2 money supply line. And there is a little bump up right here in the Bitcoin price, then it drops down here and it goes up like this. I mean, it's almost that granular where you're even getting this little tiny sub move within this channel represented accurately in the Bitcoin price that the global M2 money supply line predicted and told us was going to happen. It really is that crazy. And here's that arching price move in the Bitcoin price. And here it is. 46 days earlier, the global M2 money supply line told us that that bump up was going to happen, but that it was not going to break out yet because it was telling us here that we're going to go sideways until about March 7th. If you recall in the last video, I said it was going to be March 12th, and that was with a 52-day shift. So you can see that this is an evolving organism. It's alive. You know, the money supply globally is changing based on different countries being injected with different amounts of liquidity over time. And maybe some of those countries have a more easy access to Bitcoin than others. So like if Cambodia gets a $10 trillion injection of money, I'm just making these numbers up, well, maybe they don't have really great access to Bitcoin on-ramps. And so that is a longer delay till the Bitcoin price going up versus if United States of America or the United Kingdom or Australia gets an injection of money, maybe that's a more rapid reflection. This is just my hypothesis as to why the time shift may change through time. Because again, this line up here is representative of all countries. So it's basically an average or an aggregate of all the different countries. So that's one idea I have as to why the time shift factor may be moving through time. It's how close are the countries to Bitcoin access that are getting the capital injections or getting the increases to their money supply. But but that's my best guess. If you have a better guess, put it in the comments below as to why that could be shifting. But I do think that this line is still better to use than just the US line, because if we just use the United States M2 money supply or cherry picked some other single country's M2 money supply line, then we would be missing all the other countries. And for example, right now, if China's injections of capital are going out through the roof, we wouldn't want to miss that. We wouldn't want to not see that on this chart. So I like the global aggregated version of this metric. And so what do we have? We have a estimated, as of today, Bitcoin blast off, indicated by these little rocket ships, move up around March 7th, 2025. That's about just over 2 weeks from now, about 2.5 weeks. But like I said, this has been decreasing. 5 days ago, this said March 12th. So if we kind of factor in that moving change, then maybe in 5 more days, the blast off date will be March 3rd. You see, I'm sort of trying to factor in or predict the change in the prediction. It's sort of like a double prediction. So it wouldn't surprise me if we actually get a sooner blast off date. I mean, it could be later as well. Like I said, I don't know if the time shift is only going to decrease, but assuming it does continue to decrease for just the next 5 days, the next week or so, we could be looking at an early March blast off date. It could be earlier than March 7th. But again, that depends on which way the time shift goes and that correlation goes. Does the correlation get tighter or does the correlation get looser? I'm going to bet that the correlation gets tighter because it's such a small time span to make that prediction on. If it was 2 months out in the future, I would say, I don't know. But based on my last couple weeks of observing this, it seems like the time correlation gets tighter and tighter, or has been getting tighter and tighter in the recent history. So my bet is that this is going to actually go earlier. So maybe even March 3rd, just kind of a off-the-cuff estimate for when we're going to see that blast off. But as of right now, the chart is telling us that the global M2 money supply blasts off on March 7th. That's a 46-day factor ahead. And that's when the Bitcoin price is going to blast off on March 7th. Okay, guys, so I hope you found this useful. I have a really interesting other video coming soon of another correlation I observed. This one's a highly experimental correlation, but it looks uncanny to me. It's the tether to Bitcoin price peak correlation, the USDT versus Bitcoin price chart. And it's something I've never seen anyone share before, and it perfectly calls local tops, and I'm going to share it with you. But the caveat is it's highly experimental, although I'll let you be the judge. And real quick, I just wanted to thank everyone for subscribing to me. If you haven't already, please consider it. I try not to waste your time. I try to drop quality videos. I just reached 40,000 subscribers on my YouTube channel. And so thank you guys. You are the ones who make up that number. Hope you're having a great day. Talk to you again soon.